Police deny detaining Lagos Ogun June 12 protesters. Benue Governor Samuel Ortom says no grazing routes in his state. In international news, Israel gets a new prime minister. Netanyahu ends 12-year run as nation's leader. And in sport, Novak Djokovic wins 19th French Open title.
This is ANN News.
I am Olajumoke Olatunji. The Nigeria police has denied detaining protesters who went out in large numbers on Saturday, June the 12th, to commemorate Democracy Day. The police command says those who were arrested at the Gani Fawemi Freedom Park in Lagos have been released. Lagos State Police Commissioner Hakeem Odumosun confirmed no person is in police custody as a result of the protest. Odumosun stressed that the police had nothing against protesters as long as they were peaceful. He says the police only needed information about the protest, not a permit order. Benue State government, Samuel Ortom, has again reiterated there is no grazing route in his state. The governor was responding to President Buhari's directive that all grazing routes be opened. President Buhari made this declaration in Lagos last week during the handing over of vehicles to security agencies. Governor Ortom says grazing reserves are not in the constitution, but that there is anti-open grazing law in Benue State. He says anyone who contravenes that law would be arrested and prosecuted. Ortom has advised Benue residents to defend themselves legally, saying, quote, "We have cried enough. Now it's time to defend ourselves. We have talked too much and we are not talking again," end quote. The federal government says the continued regulation of the pump price of petrol is the reason for stagnation and impoverishment of the masses. The government says it was time for the regulation of downstream oil sector to be scrapped. The price regulatory agency says fully deregulating cost of the commodity has become vital because continued regulation benefits only the rich at the expense of the poor masses. The agency further argues that deregulation is expected to stimulate private investment and growth in the downstream sector and encourage resumption of product importation by oil marketing companies. The federal government says Nigeria loses almost 1 trillion naira annually through petrol subsidy. The federal government has called for a tripartite meeting among the Department of Petroleum Resources, National Oil Well Vodka Nigeria Limited, and the Oil Firms In-House Union. The Lagos branch of the Petroleum and Natural Gas Senior Staff Association of Nigeria. The International Oil Company was earlier levied a 250,000 naira fine by the DPR for sacking 23 Nigerian employees without due process. DPR claims the oil firm flouted its directive in 2014 and 2015 by putting in place collective bargaining agreements before embarking on redundancy. DPR has always promised to sanction any oil and gas company that refuses to comply with its directive as well as provisions of the Nigerian labor laws. More than 2 million persons living with albinism in Nigeria are complaining about stigmatization, social exclusion, and outright discrimination at different levels of society. Albinism is a rare group of genetic disorders that cause the skin, hair, or eyes to have little or no color. Correspondent Tessie Makinde reports.
43-year-old Musa Bre is a politician aspiring for the position of councillor in the forthcoming local government elections in Plateau State, North Central Nigeria. But he says finding acceptance among the people in his community has been challenging.
It has not been easy for me at all because the people in my community, especially those of them that are the stakeholders, think I can't do it because of my condition. But the love that I have for the general population is pushing me, and I'm not going to give up.
Albinism is a rare, non-contagious, genetically inherited condition. People who are born with it often have permanent visual impairment and also face discrimination due to their skin color. The United Nations says albinos have been attacked and killed in 28 countries in Africa in the past decade. Nigeria is ranked as one of the countries with the highest number of albinos in the world, with an estimated 2 million people living with the condition. Activists at this albino foundation say the government has not done enough to help the community.
Persons with albinism, particularly in Nigeria, faces a lot of challenges. And the challenges are enormous because most of them are cultural beliefs, there are myths, and there are other sorts of challenges. The stigmatization, the marginalization has been so much because even in the workplace, you hardly see persons with albinism gainfully employed in offices. And the government has not made a deliberate attempt or provision to pave way for the employment of these persons with albinism.
Campaigners here are now pushing to ensure that persons with albinism get equal protection and basic human rights.
The government should give strict laws to enable persons with albinism also have jobs. Now that the constitutional review is going on, this should be included in the constitution so that it's a right for persons with albinism to also get such jobs. And there should be laws with health care. Persons with albinism also are exposed to things like skin cancer and visual impairment. And all this, they need to be included in the health sector, the health laws.
A bill for the establishment of an agency for albinism and hypopigmentation is currently on the floor of the National Assembly. The government says the agency will be in charge of promoting access to education, health, employment, social rights and justice for persons living with albinism. It will also protect their fundamental human rights and promote freedom from stigmatization, prejudices and stereotypes. Musa Bre and others with this condition hope the bill, if it is passed, will help reduce stigma and superstitious beliefs about albinos.
Coming up, African stories. Africa's Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says U.S. COVID-19 vaccine donation will help Africa achieve 60% vaccination target. And later, international news. Israel gets a new prime minister. Netanyahu ends 12-year run as nation's leader.
You are watching ANN.
Whether in your house, at your office, on your phone or online, we are there. We have the facts behind the headlines. We cut to the chase with the news you really need. We cover every angle. We are the bigger, better news network. We are African News Network. ANN. Watch ANN News on MITV from a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. Africa Center for Disease Control and Prevention, Africa CDC, says the pledge by rich countries over the weekend at the G7 summit to donate COVID-19 vaccines to Africa would help the continent achieve 60% of its inoculation target. Correspondent Gideon Chala has the story.
As part of U.S. President Joe Biden's initiative to help vaccinate the world against COVID-19, Washington has promised to donate 500 million doses of vaccines to be shared between 100 countries around the world. And Africa, through the Africa CDC, is expected to significantly benefit from this donation.
Of the 500 million doses, 200 million will be available this year through COVAX, and will include the 92 countries or so that are in the advanced mechanism for COVAX. And then the African Union has been explicitly mentioned in the communique. So we are very grateful for that.
It will be a Pfizer vaccine dose that the U.S. will send to Africa and the rest of the world through this initiative. The Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says due to the strict cold storage requirement for Pfizer vaccines, precautionary measures must be taken to ensure effective utilization of the dose.
You can use them easily in major cities where you have electricity and the minus 80s or 70s deep freezers. And those deep freezers do not cost excessively, they are not excessively expensive. With $12,000 to $10,000 to $12,000, you can get a minus 70 or 80 degrees. And that one of them can store up to about 300,000 doses of vaccine. So I think it's a question of having the vaccines in a timely and predictable manner. That way we can plan. Planning is key in any scale-up or vast vaccination program.
Africa has planned to vaccinate at least 60% of the 1.3 billion people in the continent to guarantee herd immunity against COVID-19. And the Africa CDC Director, John Kengasong, says the U.S. vaccines donation will be instrumental in trying to achieve that goal.
We have to use a combination of vaccines to win this battle against the COVID-19. So if the Pfizer doses start coming in, our advice to member states will be to prioritize major cities. Then as other vaccines like Johnson & Johnson start arriving, because you can easily store them at ordinary refrigerator, you can expand them to the more challenging areas or remote areas.
Currently, Africa has faced significant vaccine shortages, making its goal of winning the fight against the COVID-19 pandemic a much more difficult task. But the continent is hopeful that with its hundreds of millions of Johnson & Johnson vaccines orders in the pipeline and many more jobs from other sources such as the Chinese government donations, it will soon hit the 60% vaccination target.
Although Zimbabwe is facing COVID-19 vaccine shortage, the country says it is not ready to receive the 3 million doses of the Johnson & Johnson jabs being sent through COVAX. It says facilities still have to be set up to handle the storage, and operations to monitor the side effects are also not yet in place. Correspondent Hilary Ayasiga reports.
Zimbabwe's government says it still has to put up cold chain facilities to handle the Johnson & Johnson vaccine and prepare to manage potential adverse side effects it may cause before taking delivery of the doses allocated under the AU COVID-19 vaccination program. However, medical experts point out that the vaccines currently being administered are stored at similar temperatures, but do acknowledge vaccination rollout is highly complex.
From our point, Johnson & Johnson is not that difficult to store, 2 degrees to 8 degrees. But the problem, the logistical issue comes to information dissemination, logistics of managing as a different vaccine from what we have been managing. Look at acceptance issues. Yes, people could accept it. Look at training. Look at registration of the vaccine. Look at the paperwork that is required to safely deliver. Look at the adverse events following vaccination reporting. It's a whole new thing that will need to be put up.
Medical experts also called for continued engagement with the government.
I think we need to advocate as the association to the government to say, come on, let's discuss this. While we agree, focus on bringing in Sinovac, COVAX, which are already in use, but let's not close the door on Johnson & Johnson.
Zimbabwean authorities have given assurances that its vaccination effort will not falter despite dwindling stocks, which have seen some people, especially those seeking their first jabs, being turned away.
Ivory Coast Defense Ministry says 3 Ivorian soldiers were killed on patrol near the Burkina Faso border when one of their vehicles hit an improvised explosive and the convoy was ambushed over the weekend. The attack on Saturday comes 2 days after a new counter-terrorism academy was inaugurated in Abidjan, the nation's capital, to help tackle the jihadist threat in the region. Security sources say 2 soldiers and a police officer died in the ambush and 4 others were wounded in the attack, the second in the region in a week. There was no immediate claim of responsibility, but previous attacks in the area have been blamed on jihadists.
When we return, international news. Israel gets a new prime minister. Netanyahu ends 12-year run as nation's leader. And later, sport. Novak Djokovic wins 19th French Open title.
You are watching ANN.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. Israel now has a new leader after the country's parliament formally ousted Benjamin Netanyahu on Sunday. Bibi, as he is popularly known, was Israel's longest reigning prime minister after holding the office for 12 years. Netanyahu's tenure ended after a new coalition government was approved on a 1-vote margin, 60 to 59, with 1 abstention. The new Prime Minister, Naftali Bennett, is often described as further to the right than Netanyahu. He sees no path to Palestinian statehood, and he believes Israel should annex much of the occupied West Bank. The other part of the coalition is centrist leader Yair Lapid, who helped in brokering the deal, will take his place as Prime Minister in 2 years. The 8 parties in the coalition touches on every political persuasion with very little in common. They say they will stay away from divisive issues but will focus on domestic matters. The group of 7 rich nations pledged over the weekend at its summit in Cornwall, England, to provide 1 billion COVID-19 vaccinations to help poorer countries vaccinate.
British Prime Minister Boris Johnson said on Sunday that the G7 nations have pledged to provide 1 billion COVID-19 vaccinations to help boost vaccination campaigns in poorer countries. During a news conference following the conclusion of the summit in England's Cornwall, Johnson said the pledge was in response to a request by him.
A week ago, I asked my fellow leaders to help in preparing and providing the doses we need to vaccinate the whole world by the end of 2022. I'm very pleased to announce that this weekend leaders have pledged over 1 billion doses, either directly or through funding to COVAX. That includes 100 million from the UK to the world's poorest countries, which is another big step towards vaccinating the world.
Experts say Sunday's pledge does not represent entirely new resources, and the donation is far short of the 5 billion to 6 billion shots needed by poorer nations. The plan also doesn't address distribution gaps that could make it difficult to deliver doses. Oxfam's head of inequality policy, Max Lawson, said the charity is bitterly disappointed.
It's absolutely not enough, and not just Oxfam, the WHO has said we need far more, we need them now. And we also need them to share the intellectual property. Developing countries need the rights and the recipes to make their own vaccines, not relying on the charity, the largesse of the G7. So it's completely inadequate on battling the coronavirus crisis.
Stephen Morrison, the director of the Global Health Policy Centre at the Centre for Strategic and International Studies, however, called the move a very significant step.
Venezuela has no good reports when it comes to COVID-19 pandemic. Its economy has been gravely affected, and now the pandemic is forcing more of the country's children to enter the labor force. Correspondent Mary Trini Mene has the story.
When the traffic lights turn red and the cars stop, it's time for 14-year-old Mayber Mena to go. He's supporting himself cleaning car windshields in Venezuela's capital.
My dream is to study and be something in life. I wouldn't wish this for anyone cleaning cars that are passing by, because this is not a life.
Lockdown orders have boosted the number of children in the workforce in Venezuela as families lost their incomes because of the pandemic and schools stopped in-person classes. Many children went to work to help support their families. Even before the pandemic, many Venezuelan children worked as their families' breadwinners. More than 5 million Venezuelans have left the country in recent years, many of them leaving their children behind with elderly grandparents who had trouble making ends meet. Child protection activists say the pandemic has added to the risk factors for child labor.
We are worried how violence and family tensions have increased. The closure of schools has exacerbated the difficult conditions for children. One of the things that worries us the most is that those risk factors have pushed children to work in order to survive.
16-year-old Alexandro Espinosa works as a water carrier in the Petare slum in Caracas. He's recovering from a serious fall, and the money he makes carrying water from a well to neighbors' homes helps pay for groceries and to treat his head injury.
I'm always looking for small jobs so I'm able to bring some food to my house. I loved going to school. Now I can't go because of the pandemic, so I started working.
Alexandro lives with his mother, whose government pension and food subsidy bring in less than $3 a month. The economic reality for them, like many others across the country, is that everyone needs to chip in, no matter their age.
Up next, sport. Novak Djokovic wins 19th French Open title. Please stay with us.
You are watching ANN. Somewhere in the world, every second of the day, news is happening. And of course, Nigeria is bustling with news day and night. That is why ANN doesn't sleep. Our eyes are peeled, wide open, so no story escapes our radar. We stay abreast of world events and happenings at home. We keep you up to the minute in the world of sports. We give you information to stay on top of your investments and all the hard facts you'll need to navigate your day. If you miss us on air, you can keep up to date on our website and on our social media platforms, Instagram and Facebook at ANN Africa TV. We are ANN, African News Network. We do news right in a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. In sport, Novak Djokovic has claimed his 19th Grand Slam title after defeating Stefanos Tsitsipas in the French Open 2021 men's singles final at Roland Garros in Paris on Sunday. Djokovic is now the first man in the Open era to win all 4 Grand Slams at least twice. Roy Emerson and Rod Laver had achieved the feat before Djokovic, but they did it before the Open era commenced in 1968. European football ruling body UEFA has promised to support protests against racism during the Euro 2020 matches, including referees joining in and taking a knee. UEFA says any player or official is allowed to do so. Kneeling ahead of a sport event began in 2016 when American National Football League quarterback Colin Kaepernick did so in the U.S. to protest against racism. UEFA reiterates it does not support racism. That is ANN News this evening. Thank you for joining us. For details on these and other breaking stories, visit our website, annafrica.news. Conversation continues on our social media platforms, Instagram and Facebook at ANN Africa TV. I am Olajumoke Olatunji. Have a great evening.